It's a good thing that I work for like a really relaxed company because this is pretty much how all of my work meetings go too. Okay, well, I'm just gonna get started because I don't think he's going anywhere. But hi, I'm Allison, this is Jack, and I am a knitter based in Nebraska. And today I wanted to tell you about my very first shawl pattern release. So this is the Sideline shawl. This is the full-sized version. It has a wingspan of about 68 inches, and the pattern also includes instructions for a little shawlette. So I wanted to give you all of the information on this shawl, the inspiration behind it, and show you all of the examples I've made because I have knit quite a few of these little mini versions. I am just going to show examples on the screen instead of trying to hold them up so that you can actually see the full thing. So this is a diamond-shaped shawl, and you knit it from end to end. So you start off with a teeny tiny number of stitches and do a bunch of increases as you go. Then when you hit the middle point, you're going to be doing decreases and basically make a symmetrical shawl. So this whole shawl is knit in 2-color intarsia, which is a super easy color work technique. I do have a video tutorial for it that is linked down in the description, but essentially all you're doing is switching your color in the middle of the row, and you want to trap that yarn in the back of the work to make sure that it doesn't unravel itself. After you're done knitting the bulk of the shawl, like the main body of the shawl, then you apply an I-cord to each end with the opposite color. So my inspiration for this piece comes from quite a few different places, but the number one thing is that I was trying to figure out a use for all of my single skeins of fingering weight yarn. I have this really bad habit. If I see a yarn that I really like, but I'm not really sure what kind of project that I would want for it, I buy 1 skein of fingering weight yarn because, like, worst case scenario is you can make a pair of socks. But if you do this over and over and over again, you amass this giant supply of fingering weight sock yarn that doesn't have any cohesion, and you, I guess, could make a stripy sweater out of it, but regardless, I'm going to cut to a clip to show you all of my fingering weight sock yarn. So I am upstairs in my attic to show you way over here all of my fingering weight sock yarn. So pardon the general mess, but basically these 3 containers here are all almost exactly 1 skein of fingering weight sock yarn. There's a couple double skeins in here. You can see there's 1 double skein there, but for the vast majority of these, I just have the one with the idea of knitting, I don't know, 100 pairs of socks? What do you think, Jackie? So because I have all of these single skeins of yarn and like there's only so many socks I can knit, I was trying to come up with ways that I could use 1 or 2 special skeins in a project on its own that really lets like the yarn shine through. Because I wanted to make sure that the project used up as close as it could to 2 100-gram skeins of sock yarn, I wanted to make sure that it was a shawl. It couldn't really be any other garment because like hats are definitely not going to use 2 full skeins. Any kind of sweater, depending on what size you're knitting, is going to need a vastly different amount of yarn. And like I said, I've had enough socks for a lifetime, so I'm taking a break on socks, and apparently I am entering my shawl era. And because it is winter, I knew I wanted a shawl that was kind of a little more scarfy, something that you could easily wrap up in and just like throw your coat over, not one of those like super gigantic, massive triangle shawls that you like almost wear as a sweater itself. And then the last kind of part of the inspiration behind this shawl was like problem solving or troubleshooting a couple of shawls that I think are very popular in the knitting world right now that just don't really jive with me for a couple of reasons. So the first one, I have my work in progress to show you, is the half and half triangles wrap by Pearl Soho. So the thing that I like the most about this shawl is the half and half look to it. So if you don't know, it is a giant square shawl where each half of the square in a triangle shape is a different color. Now you can fold it down the middle and have a large triangle shawl that is either one color or the other, or you can fold it the opposite way and you have a triangle on either side. I really like the look of the split side-by-side triangles, but the construction of this shawl is not my favorite. It is, for me, I know a lot of people love this shawl and just find it really soothing and have made, you know, multiple of them, but for me, I have been working on this for more than a year, and I'm more than halfway, but I've still got a really long way to go, and I think that's because the entire thing is done in short rows. So for me, it just makes it really kind of a tedious thing to work on because you're only ever working in one color and you're just knitting progressively longer and longer and longer rows as you're going through it. So I decided right away that I wanted to have a 50-50 split for this shawl, but I wanted to knit it in intarsia so that each row was much more engaging because you're flipping that yarn halfway through. For me, this shawl becomes very much like popcorn knitting because each row you're a little bit engaged, but it's still, the whole thing's knit in garter stitch. Is pretty simple construction, but it's just engaging enough to keep me interested and make me want to work on it. And I really wanted to keep that kind of color block look throughout the entire shawl. So there's a lot of shawls that use like an incorporated I-cord where you're knitting the I-cord at the same time in the same yarn as you're working on the project. But I knew right away I wanted to do an applied I-cord with the opposite color on the edge to really clean up the edge. I don't really like the look of just a raw garter stitch edge, and to have the edges color blocked as well. As I was putting this shawl together, I tried out a bunch of different needle sizes. I tried a bunch of different rates for the increases and decreases. It took me quite a lot of ripping out until I finally got it to exactly the right shape that I was looking for, and I'm really, really happy with the result because it means the instructions for the full-size shawl and the mini-size shawl are really not all that different. It just changes how many increases and decreases that you're doing. Now, applying that I-cord at the end did pose a little bit of a problem for me mathematically because I had to figure out how much yarn do you need left over to do the I-cord. So what I've done is, because you can knit this shawl really to any size that you want it to be, I have included in the pattern basically like a math guide to help you figure out how much yarn that you need to set aside from each color to make sure that you have enough to complete the I-cord. So as I was brainstorming names for this shawl, I wanted something that incorporated both like the kind of graphic color block nature of it, having it be like side by side, and also have it be a little bit sporty. My husband actually thought of the name Sideline Shawl because it's not only side by side, but it's great if you are a big sports fan. So we live in Lincoln, Nebraska. People here are absolutely bananas for the Huskers. And you see people wearing red and white, which is their team colors, absolutely everywhere, all the time. Doesn't matter what sport is going on at the time. So I was thinking, if you knit this in red and white, it would be like instant Huskers fan scarf. But if you like are a huge Bears fan, you could knit it in blue and orange, or really like any school colors could be knit into this scarf. And it is a way that you can like show off your pride for your sports team or your school or whatever it may be that has a color component to it while knitting your own scarf. So that is how this shawl came to be, but I wanted to do a little bit of a show and tell with like all of the versions that I have knit so far. So this is my first version that I knit. It is a full-sized shawl, and I knit this in Sewrella's sock yarn in the shades Aloe, which is the lighter green, and the shade Ivy, which is a darker green. Now I have had those yarns sitting in my collection for so long because both of them were just so beautiful to me, and I did my thing of buying just one skein and not knowing what to do with it. And I didn't want it just to turn into a pair of socks or a couple pairs of socks. I really wanted something special out of it. So I'm really glad not only that I ended up pairing these two together because I really love the tonal look. There's just like the tiniest little bit of variation in the color in the yarn. Like it's not perfectly solid, that I think is so, so beautiful. And I've also knit quite a few mini shawlettes of this as well. So let me talk about this one first. This I knit in the Fiber Company's Amble yarn, and the green shade is called Helvellyn, and the dark blue is called Blackbeck. So I will share with you a little bit of an oopsies on this one because my local yarn shop sells this yarn in 25-gram skeins, and these mini versions use 25 grams. So I was thinking, perfect, I'll just get 2 colors and then knit one of these. However, I made the mistake of not following the pattern, and I did too many increases, and I didn't have enough yarn left over for my I-cord. Classic. So I did end up needing to knit the I-cord in a different color in order to knit the entire I-cord, but I have tested it again and again. And if you do have 25 grams exactly and you follow the pattern for the shawlette exactly and you don't do too many increases, you will have enough yarn. Now my last two versions, this one and the one that I am wearing, I knit in yarn that was dyed by a local dyer here in Lincoln, Lazy Bee Yarn. The very first one that I did was knit in their red and pink. So the red is in the shade Ruby and the pink is called Fairy Tale Pink. So as I was working on this version, I had kind of a crazy idea of just reaching out to my local yarn dyer and seeing if she wanted to work with me and the local knit shop where she sells her yarn to do a little yarn collaboration. So we had a little meeting at the knit shop, which is Knit Paper Scissors, and we decided to go for a Mardi Gras and like St. Patrick's Day theme for the mini versions. So Jessica, who owns Lazy Bee Yarn, dyed up a bunch of half skeins. So these are 50-gram skeins in some really beautiful colors. These are just the two that I have on hand, but the green is Bon Temps Frôlé and the yellow speckle is Beads. Knit Paper Scissors does have a really good website. I will put a link for it down below, or if the yarn that was dyed for this will be up on their website, but if you are local to Lincoln, I definitely recommend checking them out regardless. Okay, so I wanted to show you exactly how I tie this shawl, but in order to do that, I need to be able to look into a mirror. So please bear with me. I will be looking not directly at the camera, but you'll get it. So I fold the shawl in half and wear it like whichever side out that I'm looking for. So I want it to be red side out, which means it is pink side touching my neck. And then I have it so that this part of the shawl is about as long as I want it to be. So if I want it to hit around here, I just have to pull a little bit more on this side. So with this being the longer side, I'm literally just going to like loop it around and then through the top. Get it twisted the way I want it, and that's it. I think that has everything covered. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments below. Links to absolutely everything will be in the description down below. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you soon. Bye.